Federal Fag and Alex Reynolds Mystery Series Book 2. Author Fred Hunter, publisher St. Martin's Press, New York, 1998. Narrator Eric Ost. For Raymond Dragon. Chapter 10. Since Mother had driven her own rental car to our hotel that morning, which now seemed eons ago, we had to drive to her place in separate cars. It was almost 6 o'clock by the time we got there. The neighborhood was a bit busier at this hour, so the not-so-gentle sound of those suicidal palm fronds was complemented by a steady flow of traffic returning home for the day. Fortunately for us, it was still early enough to find parking places with relative ease. Mother wanted to stop in her apartment to freshen up before trying Mr. Watkins. She turned the key in her door, flung it open, then threw her arms out, blocking the doorway so suddenly and dramatically that it brought to mind Margaret Rutherford as Madame Marcotte. "Someone's been in here," she said. "How do you know?" I said. "Can't you feel it? Someone's been in here." She dropped her arms to her sides and went cautiously into the apartment. Peter and I followed. The room looked absolutely normal. Things were not tossed around, nothing was broken, nothing was left open. Given the lack of evidence that anything was amiss, it was hard to believe that Mother was going by anything other than her feelings, and I didn't think her feelings were all that trustworthy at the moment, what with having witnessed a murder that morning. "Mother, nothing is wrong here. What are you talking about?" "Look," she said, waving her arms around the room, as if the disarray should be perfectly obvious. "What?" "Look," she said, pointing at each thing in turn. "The cushion on the couch isn't flush with the back. And the drawer in the desk over there, the second drawer. Don't you see it?" "What?" "It's difficult to get back in correctly. There's something wrong with it. If you don't slide it in very carefully, it cocks up a little on the right." "Well, maybe you just weren't careful the last time you used it." "But that's just it. I don't use the desk at all." "You don't?" She looked at me as if I were the retarded son she'd always wanted. "Alex, what on earth would I have brought out here with me that I'd put in a desk?" "I don't know," I said with exasperation. "Then how did you know the drawer didn't work in the first place?" "I didn't say I didn't try it. I said I didn't use it." "Hey, come on here," Peter called. Mother and I followed him into the bedroom, where he stood pointing at the bed. His meaning was obvious. The bed was made neatly, but not by Mother's standards. When she makes the bed, even if it's covered with a down comforter, you can still bounce a quarter off it. An attempt had been made to remake the bed, and it had fallen short. "You know," said Peter, "whoever went through here was pretty careful." "But not careful enough for me," said Mother. "That's because when it comes to neatness, they didn't know they were playing with one of the big guns," I said, giving her a smile that I hoped would alleviate some of her fear. I could have saved it, because she didn't look afraid. She looked angry. "Imagine," she roared, "going through my bed. What the bloody hell did they think they'd find in my bloomin' bed sheets?" "Most likely they were interested in the mattress," said Peter. Despite his concern, he was unable to hide a smile at Mother's indignation. "Imagine," she continued, "not safe in my own bloody home." "Well, I would think you'd have realized that when Patrick was murdered downstairs," I said. "At times like this, it's important to keep things in perspective, however." It probably wasn't exactly a judicious moment to remind her of the murder. Peter looked at me and rolled his eyes, letting me know that he was thinking exactly the same thing. "That didn't happen in my own home, young man," she said sharply. "That happened in someone else's home." "Well, this is it. You're not staying here anymore. You're moving into our hotel." This is the closest I'd come to putting my foot down with my mother in a long time, because with her such an action is usually ill-advised, not to mention the fact that I always sound idiotic when I do it. "I'll not be run out of my apartment by these murderers," I said flatly. "Yeah, well, this isn't your apartment either. It was loaned to you." "That's as may be, but I was told I could stay here, and I'm not going to be run out of your own home," I said along with her. I know, but you're forgetting something. Nelson told us to leave town. I assume that covers leaving this apartment. We told him we weren't going to, and he didn't tell me I had to leave this place. Her stubbornness was really starting to get the better of me. Against my better judgment, I said, No, I'm telling you, you have to leave this place. You are? I swear to God, when she said that, she looked just like Mary Poppins scolding the bedroom furniture. If I hadn't been so upset, I would have laughed. Jean, said Peter in a calm, measured tone that told both of us that he was determined to be the voice of reason. Unlike my husband here, I wouldn't think of ordering you to do anything, but you have to understand what the outcome of your staying here will be. Peter has a talent for diffusing anger by throwing combatants into total confusion. What? I won't have a moment's rest as long as you stay here. I won't be able to sleep because I'm sure you'll be in danger, and you and I both know that Alex won't get any rest either. We'll probably end up having to spend every night outside on the street watching your apartment. So, for the sake of us all, please move into our hotel. If Agent Nelson had spoken to us like that, we just might have left town. Of course, the years of affection among the three of us made Peter's words even more effective. Mother looked from Peter to me and blinked a couple of times, looking something like an older, more angular edition of Betty Boop. Then she sighed with resignation and said she'd pack her things. The one thing I can't understand is, how did they know you were here? I said as she proceeded. How did they know she was here? Said Peter incredulously. How did they know she was involved at all? This is very strange and not good, I said, shaking my head. How do you mean? Mother asked. Are you kidding? I mean that with Patrick murdered, then the attempt on us, then Brett's murder, and now this break-in, I can't help feeling that whoever's doing all this is spinning out of control. Mother paused in her packing, and for the first time she really looked uncertain. But that only lasted for a moment. Her inborn British pluck wouldn't allow her to remain unfocused for very long. She resumed packing, shrugging it off with a typical understated, "That isn't a comforting thought." By the time she'd finished, she looked fully resigned to moving into a luxury hotel. That's one of the things I like most about her, and one of the traits I'm most grateful she passed on to me, her ability to accept whatever comes her way, especially if it's being rolled in by a waiter. Anybody home? Called a voice from the landing. Yes, come in, Reg. Reg Watkins came through the door. He was dressed in a tan linen suit with a yellow tie, both of which looked a little too sporty for him. He had the appearance of someone who had not lived in the city long enough to adopt its character. Although he was fairly attractive, his attire and his tentativeness gave him an air of being perpetually out of place. Mother was probably right about him being lonely. He glanced at Peter and then at me, then noticed Mother's suitcases. Are you going somewhere? Mother took on a sheepish expression and said, I'm afraid I'm moving out. Oh, no, he said, looking pained in a way that told me he'd already fallen under her spell. It's the murder, isn't it? Yes, she said with a sigh. It's thrown me off more than I thought, and I really can't see staying here. I groaned inwardly. I expected that any moment she would have a fit of the vapors and drop onto a fainting couch. Mother noticed my reaction, and from the way she narrowed her eyes for a split second, I knew I was in for it. She curled her lips and said in a tone that implied she was dealing with unruly children for whom she'd have to turn her life upside down in order to avoid a scene. Actually, Alex won't let me stay. He thinks it's too dangerous. She didn't know how close she was coming to being the second murder victim in this complex. I really hated being forced into the role of an over-solicitous son, but she gave me no choice. It is too dangerous here, I said, hoping that my voice had conveyed that she was treading on thin ice unexpectedly. Watkins took my side. I can understand you're feeling that way, even though there's murders all over the place. You can't feel safe when it happens next door. Exactly my point, said Mother, her tone getting more exasperating. There are murders everywhere, so I might as well stay here. No, you're coming to stay with us. Where do you live, Mr. Robbins? Watkins asked, looking in my direction. Nobody answered, and then I suddenly noticed that all three of them were looking in my direction. I turned red when I remembered that Robbins was the alias Mother had adopted for this escapade. I covered clumsily with, "Oh, I didn't realize you were talking to me. My name is Reynolds." "Really?" he said with a quick glance toward Mother. "Yes," she said. "Alex is my son from my first marriage. Mr. Robbins was my second husband." "Oh," said Watkins. I thought his eyes were about to glaze over. Then again, I thought my eyes were going to glaze over too. "So where do you live? Is it far away?" He turned to Mother and added, "Because I'd hate to lose touch with you." "Well, we don't." What Alex is trying to say, Peter cut in, looking at me as if he was wondering how I managed to tie my shoelaces without assistance, is that we've just come out here to get his mother. We're from Chicago, and we're going to be going back there in a few days. He began, then realized he didn't know whether Mrs. Robbins had used her own first name. "Mrs. Robbins is going to stay with us in our hotel while we try to find a better place for her." "Good Lord, you make it sound like I'm being packed off to a home." "Don't tempt me," I whispered to her. "But I think you're right," said Watkins pointedly. "If you were my mother, I'd get you out of here. I'm not sure I wouldn't insist that you went back to Chicago." The three of us looked at him. His expression was sincere and concerned, but his words came so close to what Nelson had said to us, that it gave me pause. "What do you mean?" I said a bit more forcefully than I intended. He recoiled slightly and groped for words. Nothing. I just meant, I know how you feel, and, well, I mean, what with living so far away yourselves, I imagine you'd feel better about it if she was there. I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything." He looked so stricken that I couldn't help feeling sorry for him. I apologized, explaining that Mother's close proximity to her murder had us all on edge. He smiled as if I'd just verified what he'd been thinking. "You see," said Mother, recovering quickly and picking up the ball, "this murder business has been a much more personal thing for my Alex." "Really?" "Yes. By a strange coincidence, Alex knew Patrick, the boy who was killed." "Really?" he said, his eyes widening with amazement. "Yes, I did. We went to college together." "Oh," said Watkins, blushing. I realized after a moment that he was embarrassed at being so interested. "I'm really sorry." He turned to Mother and added, "Then you must have known him too." No, she said quickly. "I didn't really know many of Alex's college friends. Alex just recognized the name when I told him about the murder." She glanced at me and raised her eyebrows. "I always find it disarming that she can lie so convincingly on command. On the few occasions that she's felt it necessary to do so, it makes me wonder if I'm adopted." "Oh, listen," I said. "I was hoping to get hold of some of Patrick's other friends, and Mother said you might know one or two." "She did." He looked genuinely confused. "I didn't really know Patrick at all except to talk to him, say hi to. He wasn't a very—" "It's all right," I said, hoping to help him along. "I don't like to speak ill of anyone, but he wasn't a very outgoing person." "He wasn't very friendly," I said, nodding. Watkins looked relieved to have the onus of making a negative assessment removed from him. "Yeah, well, I didn't know him, so I really don't know any of his friends." "No, Mother didn't say you actually knew them, only that you recognized one, someone called Sid Wishes?" Watkins blushed again and looked down at the floor. "I recognized him, yes." I couldn't help smiling. He looked the way I felt when that policeman caught me out about renting a porno movie. "I would have recognized him too," I said reassuringly. He looked up at me and some of the redness was gone. "Oh, well, yeah, he was here a few times. Do you happen to know his real name?" Watkins cocked his head just slightly. "No, why?" "We just want to talk to him." Watkins looked as if he'd like to ask the question again, but had decided that to do so might be considered rude. There was a confused pause, during which we all glanced at one another as if carrying on some sort of ocular pub pong game, while waiting for somebody to speak. Finally, I put on what I hoped was a look of extreme sadness and said, "Well, you see, it's just that it had been so long since I'd seen Patrick. I just wanted to talk to someone about how he was doing out here. Convincing lying is not one of the traits that my mother has passed on to me, so I was glad that my explanation was essentially the truth." "Oh," his eyes looked as if they were going to glaze over again, And he didn't look like he believed me, so I guess I'm even bad at telling the near truth. Well, I don't know what his real name is, but I know where he's going to be tonight. You do? He's going to be at the Peacock. He's doing personal appearances there this weekend. The Peacock? Yeah. It's a bar in Montana, a few blocks north of Ninth. He's going to be there tonight and tomorrow night. It was in the paper. The paper, said Peter incredulously. Watkins flushed again. The local gay paper. Well, said Mother breezily, apparently feeling this had gone about as far as it could, we'd better get going if we're going to go. She stopped and took hold of Watkins' small white hands. It really was nice meeting you. I wish I could stay, but... She cocked her head in my direction and raised her left eyebrow, and Watkins nodded knowingly. She added with a shrug, Maybe I'll see you again. I hope so. Maybe we'll see you tonight, said Peter. Watkins looked confused for a moment, then his expression changed into something I can only describe as scandalized. Oh no, I'd never go to a place like the Peacock. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.